And when I look in the mirror, there's a man that I see who's been searching a lifetime for a way to be free, never knowing the darkness that was following me like a mutating virus, one that I couldn't see. And I breathed you in, and I fell again. I can see the end. Here I am now, I transcend. I want you to know I see who you are, and I'm letting go. You were everywhere, in my everything. I don't need you now. I was searching for answers, they were there all the time, but I just couldn't see them. In my heart I was blind. I believed in your story, now I know it wasn't true. And I see who I am now, and I know what to do. And I'm breathing in, when I start again. I want you to know I see who you are, and I'm letting go. You were everywhere, in my everything. I don't need you now. Just turn around and go. I can't do this anymore. I want you to know I see who you are, and I'm letting go. You were everywhere, in my everything. I don't need you now. I want you to know that I let you go. I want you to know I see who you are, and I'm letting go. You were everywhere, in my everything. I don't need you now. I want you to know I see who you are, and I'm letting go. I want you to know.
Hello, greetings, divine beings. Welcome. I am Divinity Community. If you didn't know, if you didn't hear, or if you weren't on yesterday's call, we are no longer Incomation. We've made an executive decision to completely rebrand and put the divinity process number one. And we're going to go into that a little bit more today. But before I get into the call, I just want to say welcome, everybody. It's good to see you all, see your beautiful faces. You got Alan, Dan, nice to see you. Wilhelm, you got Tui. Yeah, so I'm just calling out the people that I see. So if I don't call out your name, I'm not ignoring you. I just can only see like 5, 6 people. So welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to tonight's call. It's day 12. And we're really excited to be here with you all. We got some amazing news with to share with you all, and just some amazing energy to just share with you. So I just want to thank you all for being here. Like always, I really want to know where everyone's calling in from, so we can make sure that we see how far our reach is getting. So whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on YouTube, LinkedIn, or whether you're here on Zoom, I would love to know where you guys are calling in from. So we got Stockholm in the house, Sweden, Scotland, Puerto Rico. Wow, we got some international folks just coming in strong today. Awesome, awesome. Holland, Minnesota. And Will, if you could just make sure that we're letting people in. Beautiful, beautiful. Poland. Wow, Europe is showing out today. Okay, cool, 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 cool. Welcome everyone that's just coming in. I don't know how we're gonna top yesterday or the day before or whatever, but we're gonna let it flow. Shout out to Florida, Queensland, Australia, Seattle, Washington. Beautiful. So, before I get this going, who's excited for the new rebrand of Incomation, shifting it to I Am Divinity? If you're excited, if you're ready to be a part of a mission that's bigger than just money, I want you to put a 111 in the chat below. Oh, snaps, they're going. Okay, 111s are going. All right, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We're excited to have you all with us on this journey. Not only are we we have one of the only processes in the industry for an instant and permanent transformation, we also have the best financial products in the industry. And that's hands down, and that's actually one of the reasons why we made the executive decision to kind of shift. There's a billion Forex companies, there's a billion crypto companies. We don't want to be like them. We're not here to be just like another one of those companies that are going to be here for another 6 months, maybe a year, pushing it 2 years, right? We're not one of those companies. We're here to leave a long-lasting change on you guys here, our communities, our states, our countries, and the world. And that's exactly what we're doing by shifting our own inner world. There's a story, there's a guy, he said, hey, I want to change the world, right? So how do you do that? So the guy that he was asking the question to, he was talking to a sage, and he said, well, if you want to change the world, you need to focus on your country. If you want to change the country, you need to focus on your state. If you want to change your state, you need to focus on your city. If you want to change your city, you need to focus on your home. And if you want to change your home, you need to focus on yourself. So I just want to thank you all for really being committed to your own journey, your own evolution. And here at I Am Divinity, like I said, we're not just here to just help you make a little bit of money to put in your piggy banks, which is great because we have the best financial products in the game. There's literally no other company. I don't care who you want to throw out there, whether it's I'm going to name drop the IMLs, the economies, the whatever. They don't have nowhere near as legit of products as we do. But that's not even the most interesting part about us. The most interesting part about this is that we help you access a power within you that has always been there, that's been lying dormant, untouched, untapped into. I want to ask you all, what if you could have access to this power 24/7, 365 to basically create whatever it is that you wanted, whatever you could imagine? What would you do? What would you sacrifice to be able to have that power? I know for me, I had gone through so many different companies, relationships, transformational workshops, personal development, all of these different things. And I was thinking that I was looking for this thing that was outside of me. And after doing this process with our mentor, Don Smith, I realized that it was literally looking me in the mirror the entire freaking time. So if you're excited, I want you to stand up in your chair, whether your camera's on. I want you to stand up because this is something unlike you've ever been a part of. And so I want to just thank our CEO, Mr. Jamie Devine, for taking the chance on himself, right? None of this would have been possible if it weren't for Jamie going through all the pain, all the hardships, all the challenges that he had gone through his whole life. And he got to a point where all the money, all of the relationships, all of the whatever it was, all of the external things, the cars, the penthouses, all of that stuff, he knew that it didn't make him happy. And he got to a point where he's like, yo, I need to make a change. And he met this guy named Don Smith, which if you don't know who he is, we'll talk about him a little bit more. And he took a chance on him. He didn't ask a billion questions like, how is this going to work? He just knew that it would work because he felt the energy. And so, without a further ado, I would like to introduce you all to our CEO, Mr. Jamie Devine. Come on here, brother.
Thank you, good sir.
Of course.
Welcome, everyone. It's always pleasantly surprising to see that you're still here. Shout out to Dan. I see your face. Yeah, as Dan eloquently put it last call yesterday, he said something along the lines of, are you preaching to the choir? Are you singing to the choir? And at this point, I trust that I am. I trust that I am because I know you wouldn't be here unless everything that we've been saying for the last 12 days resonates with you. So just to get a feel for where you're at, I'm going to share where I'm at. But put a 1 in the chat if you've already gone through Don's program at least once. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Way to go. Lots of 1s. Beautiful. Okay, that's yeah, that's getting to be over half of them. So put a 2 in the chat if you haven't gone through Don's process yet. Put a 2 in the chat. Okay, George, I see you. Is it just George? Mark, okay. Okay, Patricia, yeah. Stefan, okay. Now put a 3 in the chat if you don't even know what we're talking about yet. If you're just brand new, you've never even heard of this crazy guy named Don. Any 3s? Okay, amazing. 1s and 2s. Well, that's refreshing to talk to you guys, and I know that I'm sure there's plenty of new people that will see this, but I'm going to talk to you. So for the ones, put an honest 0 if you went through Don's process, experienced what we're talking about, but gave it up. The ego came in. Put a 0. If you've been through it, had the experience, ego took it away. Wow. Okay. There's a few of you. Well, I can certainly relate with that. As close as I got to with Don, there was 3 major times in my journey throughout that whole process in the last 4 years that not only did I give it up, but I like completely threw it to the whole other side of the world and ran as far away from Don as I could so that I didn't have to face the truth. Don has a amazing gift to not be able to allow you to get away with any bullshit. And so if I wanted to hold on to any bullshit, I had to run as far as I could away from Don. So just the fact that you're here, you're doing good. You're hanging in there. And that is one of the main reasons that I was called to really put together this whole community and this whole support system, because even though I had Dawn, went through my own journey and I didn't have a lot of Jamies to talk to get that insight. I mean, it's hard to relate where Dawn was at. It had been so many years that he went through that. So that's really what we're building this whole community for, is a support system to help everyone that's committed, those ones, get there and stay there. So the first thing I want to do, and for those of you that are a number 2, you can also participate in this. The first thing I want you to do is close your eyes and recall that highest state that you experienced. For some of you, it was that moment in Don's process. For those of you that haven't experienced it, recall a moment in your life that was just absolutely divine. You can't put it into words. It's like one of those, wow, like how did I do that? So just close your eyes and recall that. Four seconds. 4 seconds is all you need to reconnect to your divinity. So I say that because some of you may feel like, where did it go, man? It's been days and maybe weeks that I haven't felt how I felt during my transformation. And I can give you mine. Don shared it a tidbit of it a few days ago. It was in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Don and I had been traveling around the world, and we were in this condo in Kuala Lumpur, overlooking this the tower there, whatever the big major tower is. I forget the name of it. I was too involved in my my own divinity to even recall anything in the 3D, put it that way. But I went to the bathroom. My room had an ensuite with a soaking, like soaker tub, bathtub. And I got into the bathtub. Great place to do your I am divinity, your your divine focus. So I do my divine focus. At the time, we were calling it infinite awareness. And all of a sudden, it just like a lightning bolt just shot through my entire body. And the only way that I can describe it to give you any little bit of sense is that it was like a full body orgasm. I don't have a better word for it. Sorry for those of you that are offended, but it was a full body orgasm. And for the next 72 hours or so, 3-4 days, every 3 or 4 seconds, it was hitting me. Like I couldn't stop it. I was literally just walking around with this full body orgasm nonstop all the time, like pure bliss. That word doesn't even do it justice. And I say that because that moment for me was 2 years roughly after I had done the process the first time, which that moment that I had in my first process with Don was like, wow. But this one in Kuala Lumpur was a whole other level. Now, the craziest part, the absolute craziest part is that I found a way, should I say the ego found a way to trick me, but I allowed it, and I gave that shit up. I gave it up. And I went back to trying to get that feeling again in any other way that I could externally. And so it's not rare to be tricked by the ego. And I wasn't fully aware of that without going through my process. But it's so amazing to share all of this with you that are just beginning your journey. The people like Sam that can come here and I get to just dump him with all of everything that I experienced, that whole 4-year experience, and narrow it down to a few hours. And now he can get there without the 4 years. Like, what an absolute gift. And so that's why I'm still here 12 days later sharing this all with you. So kudos to you, those of you that have stepped into it. For the number twos, I don't know what else to tell you other than I literally searched, just as many people in our community have searched my entire life for anything remotely close to that fulfillment. And there, Sam opened the call with, we have one of the only processes in the world. Well, I challenge anyone to find one of the others, because I know I search far and wide, more than most that I know. And I've come across people that talk about this state, the Eckhart Tolles of the world, the Sadhgurus of the world. And from the sounds of it, those two gentlemen, for example, they did stumble into their moment, But if you ask them, what process can I do to duplicate what you found? I have not found anyone else other than Don that has broken it down, reverse engineered it, and actually applied it to thousands of people, and it worked. I haven't found anyone. And I'm sure you wouldn't be on this call if you had found it already, because you wouldn't be searching anymore, for those of you that are new. And I just say that so that you know how valuable this is that's sitting right in front of you, for those of you that have yet to get in there. And the ego will use everything and anything to stop you. Oh, well, I haven't had the time. That's a major one. We've had people come on this call multiple days, hour and a half plus on this call. And the process we're talking about is an hour and a half. And they try to tell us they don't have the time to do it. They haven't found the time. But it's like, well, by the time you stop listening to me talk in an hour, you could have already done it. But that's how tricky the ego is. And it happened to me. I mean, as recent as this week, I shared with those of you that were on the call yesterday that the ego had twisted me into putting the mission, the vision of raising humanity's consciousness over above my own divinity, because I was seeing them as one and the same. So it was getting me off track of my own divinity by convincing me I had to spend less and less time in my own divinity and more time in supporting everyone in the community and doing all of the work that we've been doing. And so 2 days ago, when we embodied that filter of every decision I make, will this bring me closer to divinity or further away? That's the filter. So now, for example, my divine focus, that exercise that Don asks you to do 3 times a day, that many of you, if you're the ones and the zeros that gave it up, I guarantee you, because I did it and I witnessed it in many others, Don literally only asks you to do 2 things to hold your state. 2 things, 2 exercises. Number 1, 3 times a day for a minimum of 10 minutes, recall that highest state. Just close your eyes and recall that highest state. Minimum 10 minutes when you wake up, 10 minutes in the middle of the day, 10 minutes before you go to bed. That's exercise 1. A total of 30 minutes in the entire day. But how many of you and me, I'm not pointing fingers, I went through it too. The ego gets in there and it says, well, you don't really have to do that one in the middle of the day. As long as you do once a day, as long as you do 1 time a day, you're good. And that 1 time a day or the 2 times a day soon becomes 0 times a day. And next thing you know, you wake up and you don't even know where your divinity went. It went to the corner store with someone else. It's not with you anymore. And you're right back in those ego human toxic patterns and programs. And the second exercise that Don asks us to do is to just, in bullet form, just a couple bullets a day, just take a couple notes in a journal or on your phone. We actually created the group chat for this to have everyone share their daily updates. So just a couple things that you noticed that are unique now that you're in this new consciousness level. Now, after your transformation, for example, today I got home and I was the one to initiate hugging my partner. For as long as I can remember, they were always the one coming to give me a hug, or they were always the one to tell me I love them. And today I did that. Just little bullet points that are, because here's why it's so important. Again, the ego will trick you in so many different ways, but these daily updates are like your ammunition from when the ego comes in, and you can say, no, ego, I got all this stack of evidence of all of these changes that have happened. One big one that the ego will get you at is, that transformation didn't actually work. Didn't actually work. And the list is infinite. So that is why Don asked us to do two things. So for those of you that said 0 in the chat, give me an honest number 9 if you just stop doing one of those two exercises, or both. Just give me a 9 if you stop doing those two requirements. Thank you for your honesty. Muttley, Powell, Michael, Arcadia. Yeah, it's like you just had the most transformational experience of your entire life. And the guy that helped you get there asked you to do two simple things. And the next day, or a few days later, a few weeks later, the ego convinced you not to do them anymore. And it reminds me of that analogy of the frog in boiling water. So if you put a frog in warm water and turn it to a boil slowly, it won't jump out of the boiling pot of hot water. It won't jump out because the gradual increase to get to the boiling point, it doesn't even recognize it, and it boils to death. That's what the ego does to you, little by little. Next thing you know, you're back in the boiling water and you can't even recognize it. You take that same frog and you throw him in boiling water, he'll jump right out because he knows it's boiling. So, for those of you that have been through the process and gave it up like I had before, I encourage you to lock in just those two simple things. So going back to me now putting my divinity first instead of the mission, which ironically is the number one thing that I can do for the mission, is be at my highest level and allow everything to flow from that place. But the ego will trip you up and say, no, you got to put more time and focus and energy, and all these people need the help. And if you don't do it, then you're not going to get there, and all of that. So for the last 2 days since we put that filter on things, and Don showed me that I was putting the mission number 1 instead of my own divinity, I've done my divine focus. Okay, just today, I didn't do 10 minutes when I woke up. I did 2 hours. 2 hours. And then again before this call, which to us is middle of the day because we're on opposite schedules, I did another 2 hours. And when I go to sleep, I'm going for at least an hour. And this is coming from the guy who was managing all of these pieces and business and all of that stuff. You can get overwhelmed with that very quickly. And I was convinced that I did not have the time to do the one thing that Don asked me to do to hold that state. So some of you may be hearing, well, Jamie, I got a job still, like 9 to 5. Like I don't have 2 hours in the middle of the day. I'm not saying you need to do 2 hours, but he asked for a minimum 10 minutes. I mean, even if you're at your job or whatever, you could go to the bathroom for 10 minutes and do it there. The point is, if you put divinity number one, there's no more excuse not to do it because that's literally the number one thing you could do is soak in that divine state that you experienced if you went through the process. That's all he's asking us to do is just be with yourself, be with your divinity for 10 minutes when you wake up before you grab your phone and get distracted by all the human shit. Muttley says, I struggle to find my blissful moment. So Muttley, did you experience it going through the process? Did you experience it there? Or did you you weren't even able to access it during the transformation? Because many of you, even though you were watching, okay, Muttley says nothing. So this is a great example. I watched my own mother do this. I watched my own mother. I had her on multiple times on Zoom with Dawn in a small group. And conveniently, every time Dawn would get to the part of narrowing in and facing it and blowing it away, I could see on the screen, she would be distracted. The ego would distract her with whatever it was. A couple of times, she literally walked off and went to the bathroom, like in the middle of the process. So, Muttley, I encourage you to ask yourself how tuned in you were to that process, because there's many ways the ego can stop you, distract you, even during it. And if you still weren't able to get there, then from what I've Muttley, thank you for your honesty, Muttley. He says, I smoke weed. Okay. Well, I'll tell you straight up, because I struggled with weed. Before the process with Dawn, I was every day smoking weed. Every day. Couldn't go a day without it. Justified it in a million different ways. You know, the typical, well, it's not really a drug, it's just a plant. And, like it actually helps me meditate and like helps me focus at the gym. And it's like all that bullshit. So when I went through Dawn's process, boom, no more weed addiction. Remember, I told you that 3 major times I gave it up. So it was about 3 weeks into the process, or 3 weeks, I should say, after I did the process with Dawn. And we were now getting pretty close, Dawn and I. We were at the point where we were meeting up almost every day. And I was helping him, like introducing him to the top people I knew. Like we were working together basically at that point. And sure enough, ego comes in, said, you know what, Jamie, a little weed won't hurt. Like you had your transformation, man. Like you're doing awesome. Like your divinity is so strong that a little weed can't affect that. So, okay, great idea, ego. Let's go down to the corner store where you can buy it in Vancouver, Canada, almost as much as you can buy a Starbucks. Okay, that's how much people in Vancouver are comatose. You can go in and walk into the store with you don't need a license, you don't need anything. Just, hey, I want to buy some weed. That's how it is in Canada now. And I know there's a couple states like that too. Canada's gotten so bad that it's the worst street I've ever been to. And I've been to the darkest streets in Mexico, Colombia, like just think of the scariest places the news told you was scary. I've been there. Had no problems. But there's this one street in Vancouver, it's called Main and Hastings. And if any of you have been there or heard of it, you know what I'm talking about. It is a complete disaster. For blocks, there's just drug addicts everywhere. And the crazy part is the government is now going down there and literally giving people free heroin. Heroin for free. They have it in freaking vending machines there. Absolutely disgrace, a total disgrace. Anyway, coming back to, I was convinced I could have a little weed. Well, had some weed. First of all, that was the first experience I had that weed actually brought me down, right? Because imagine going back to where I was before I took Don's process on the consciousness scale. For those of you who haven't seen it, it starts at 0, goes to 1,000. Okay? To give you some reference points, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, 1,000. Okay, all the way down to 75, Hitler. Okay, and the total population right now, 210. Not much further higher than Hitler. Maybe that's why he had so many followers not too long ago. So, so I was like 85% of the population, somewhere around 100 to 200. So when I would smoke weed, which has been tested in the 300s, weed would bring me up, right? It's the high. It's a synthetic high, but it would bring me up for about 24 hours, and then I'd have a crash back to my old shit, right? But this was the first time after I'd gone through Don's program that I experienced weed bringing me down. That was interesting. But guess what? I didn't give it up that day. I went about 2 weeks straight smoking it every day, ignoring Don's phone calls, ignoring his messages, totally hiding. So yeah, I tried it. You can't hold your transformation with weed. Good luck. Okay, good luck. In fact, you can't hold it with anything external, nothing synthetic. I got to the point where I couldn't even have coffee to hold my highest state because coffee would bring me right down. And next thing you know, it was followed by many other destructive habits. I'm not telling you to give up the coffee. You do whatever you want, but it is a drug and it's a synthetic high. And if you actually were in your natural high state all the time, you wouldn't want it. I guarantee you, because I've been back and forth and I know.
What about food?
Great question. Food is a great way for the ego to use the fact that it's not a drug. But man, if you look at most of the ingredients in most of the food, it's not food. It's food-like product. And all of those scientists of those billion-dollar corporations have zero interest in your health. They just want you to be addicts. And many of you are. So they make it as addicting as possible with all the chemicals that they put in there. So again, now, yes, if you compare it to the weed or the coffee or the smoking, then yeah, maybe it won't have that much of an impact. But for me, at this level, I can't get away with this. And I tried many times over the last 4 years. So if you can get away with putting junk in your body, go for it. But I'm telling you, it's the ego using it to bring you down. Because again, when you're in this state, you don't want to put junk in your body, no matter what it is. You don't need it. So for me, when I'm really at this highest level, I'm mostly fruit, and I'll do some plant-based rice or whatever. But when I'm at my highest, even just saying this to you, I'm like, fuck, I got to give up the cooked plant-based now. You know, it reminds me of a story. It was the Buddha, if I can recall, and he had like a long line of people that would come and see him, right? And they would one by one go through this line that was hours long and get to the front and ask their question. And he had this mother and boy come up and ask their question. And the boy asks, is sugar like good for me? Should I stop having sugar? That's what he said. Should I stop having sugar? And Buddha said, come back in a week and I'll tell you the answer. And they're like, what? Like, we just waited hours in this lineup. What do you mean come back in a week? Like, okay, whatever. So they come back in a week, wait their hours in the lineup, and they get to the front. They go, all right, like, should I stop eating sugar? And the Buddha goes, yes, you should stop eating sugar. And they're like, oh, why did you wait a week, like, to tell us that? Why couldn't you told us that a week ago? And he said, well, I had to make sure that I got off the sugar first before I told you to stop. You know? So again, I'm not telling you guys what to do. I'm just telling you my experience throughout all these knot holes that the ego takes you on. And it will use anything. So if food is your drug, I mean, it will find a way. You know, it will go from whatever it is to the fast foods, to the next thing you know, you're eating McDonald's every day and you're justifying it because, well, I gave up the coffee and I gave up the weed, so, you know, the food ain't so bad. But it's just another form of external high that you're searching for because you're not truly holding your state, and the ego's using that to pull you out. So do with that what you choose. Dan, I see your hand. Go ahead. Really appreciate you being here every day, by the way.
Gotcha. I have to be here. It's just it's pulled because you don't understand. There's something that's called homeopathy, and I believe that similars attract versus the garbage that they say opposites attract. So my question is, what about maybe you're putting on what they call in the Christianity world the armor of God? So when you're all venturing amongst other people, you know where my question is going.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
This happens to another person, and you know, I'll just say part of the sentence, then you finish it, and then answer it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Dan, people to me was my weakness. So whether it was the relationship with my mom, my brother, my partner, friends that I have around, coworkers in our system, that to me before that was my weakness, because remember I had that thing of putting the mission first. And so for example, little things that would add up. So Sam was on his way here, and I didn't even know if the guy smoked cigars. Okay, I didn't know, but he was on his way here, and he was stopping through Manila. And I remembered from months and months and months ago when I had cigars that they were the only ones that had like some high quality ones. And I remembered back when we had executives at the company that loved to drink and smoke cigars. It was like, okay, maybe this will help us relate and bond, and that will help the mission. Putting my own divinity number two, right? So Sam was like, "Oh, awesome, that would be great," you know. So he picks up the cigars. He comes to Davao here in the Philippines, and for the next 4 nights, you know, we're having a cigar a night, and I hadn't touched cigars for, you know, a year or so. And then on day 5, it was like, okay, now you're faced with a decision, because do we just order more from, right? Like, we're out now. Do we order more from Manila, or do we quit, right? And it was like, Sam was leaning towards ordering more, and I was leaning towards quitting, but it was a tough decision, right? And so next thing you know, it was, okay, well, we'll stop that. And then a few of the guys on the team, Will, for example, calling you out, bud, love you. But hey, I'm sharing everyone's dirty laundry here. So, so Will smokes one of those vape pens, right? He actually, before he came on to Incomation, he had and still has a business. And it was so the office we had for Incomation was right next door to Will's business of selling vape pens. Okay, you know, the little, you know what I'm talking about. And so we didn't have cigars around anymore. So so Will just said he's selling his vape. Oh, well, your business. Okay, there you go. You're gonna have everyone's gonna have to hold him accountable for that. So I was now finding myself smoking the vape pen. Okay. So again, like, very quickly, yes, you can be affected. For me, it was rampant for the last year or so of my journey. That was the one thing that could take me out, was other people. Like when my brother came to town, went through his transformation, I was proud of him, giving up all the hard drugs. So now it was like we could justify him drinking a beer every day. And next thing you know, even though I hadn't drank in a couple of years, I'm having to drink, you know, a beer with my brother. That sort of thing, right? So I'll tell you how I got over it, and whatever you want to call that protection, but it goes right back to putting the divinity, your divinity number one. Your divinity number one. That's the filter. So now, no matter what's happening around me, it doesn't affect me. And me and my divinity, way more influential than anyone who's not, that's engaging in any of those things that are at a lower level. But where my weakness was, is I was putting other people before my divinity. And I justified it because I was helping them get their divinity. You see how twisted that is? So now I'm rock solid. I can't be influenced by any of that, only because I have that filter. And only because I made the decision to put my divinity number one, no matter what anyone else is doing. And already, you know, those, so they're now, like Will just said, I'm selling the vape business, which means, does that mean you're gonna stop vaping as well, Will? Okay, he said yes. So now we gotta hold them to it. So just me holding, see how influential that was? Just right here, right now, just happened. We'll just quit vape because that new filter, right? So I hope that answers your question, Dan. I think it does. I don't think anyone can influence you as long as you're making the
I
decision.
don't believe that we ever answer anything. There's always a question that leads on to another question. And I've always been all my life like that. Maybe a lot of you have been that way too. And so as I'm growing up, going, don't ask any more questions. And here I feel I can ask any question and I can be at home and free again. And my other thought is I have a sense that maybe women might have sometimes a difficulty with this more than men. And I'm not, because they're nurturers and maybe they're carrying more rather than their own. So I'm not saying that like someone's better than another, because I get your point, but it may be because of their natural tendency to care for others. which maybe if we
Well,
say in a way, we're kind of, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm respectfully, I'm going to challenge you on that, because the women and men thing is just a human ego program. So
Okay.
if we go beyond that, right now it's just pure consciousness to pure consciousness. But if they haven't gone through the process that we're talking, they're going to have those toxic patterns no matter what. And then even after the process, like me, prime example, ego tricks me and I get out and I don't recognize that until it's, in my face and I make that new decision. But you can argue that generally speaking, women are more sensitive, but I know plenty of men that give up their power for the relationship or for their children or whatever. It's on both sides, it's rampant, and it's just the human ego thing. So I wouldn't put it in men versus women.
Okay.
And I appreciate how comfortable you feel asking the questions, man. You're right. That's what this is all about.
I kind of like being wrong.
Well, I know when I first met Don, I was wrong a lot, and I was glad that I was because I was in so much pain up until then, man. It was like I hope I was doing everything
Oh,
wrong.
my pain level is diminished in about 6 days, and I've struggled with this for 20 years.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, so I'm gonna ask you, Dan, how are you doing with the 3 times a day divine focus?
Well, I don't know if I follow directions properly. So I guess I'd almost want you to, I was going to ask earlier that maybe we can even, have somewhere I can rehearse that to know. I don't know if I need to do it proper, but I'm going and saying I am divine every day and holding my fingers, and that's what I mainly been doing. Maybe I'm missing the other part here that you were speaking of.
Yeah, well, we touched on it yesterday as well. So again, that's just tricks of the ego telling you, oh, well, you're not really doing it right, or whatever.
Well, I
So
don't think I followed enough instructions in the first place, and I still didn't listen properly when you were saying this.
yeah,
So
well, it's
I don't.
yeah, I mean, I was right next to Don, and I gave it up within a few weeks, right? I stopped doing the exercise, and many people on this call admitted that they stopped doing it as well. So it's not about being right or wrong. It's just hammering in how important it is.
I don't
And
know
then,
if anybody else out there wants to know that in exercises again, but
yeah, I'll
I
go over it.
confess I kind of just blanked out on you.
Yeah. Interesting, right? That's just the ego distracting you because I just went over it maybe 10 minutes ago. And then I also went over it yesterday when we were talking, you and I as well. So I'll go over it a third time, but because it is that important. And I appreciate you being honest that you tuned out. And again, that's what the ego will do. So right when you wake up, right, when you're still in that half dream world, perfect time. So the anchor that all of you that have been through the process know of, put your two fingers together, right? Like a chain link fence. Close your eyes. I am. And then go to that highest state. Recall that feeling, that pure bliss that you felt. For many of you, it was that moment in the transformation process. And for those of you
Good
that didn't,
morning, Ed. How are you?
you talking to me, Timothy, or I think you need to
Oh,
mute him.
doing good.
Yeah, please mute him.
Sit
Our
down,
I'm
favorite
doing
Timothy.
amazing,
folded.
Tim. How are you? Thanks, Phil. So yeah, that's hey, prime example of the ego, right? Trying to get in here and distract us as we're trying to learn this exercise. So anyway, just recalling that moment and just sit in that, keep your eyes closed the whole time for a minimum of 10 minutes. For a minimum of 10 minutes. And for any of you that are having a hard time recalling that, or you had a hard time getting there, it's really important that you're not using any type of external synthetic drugs, like all of those things that would interfere in the sensitivity. And that's why Don, for many years, and I've followed his guidance, we're just we're pure of everything, even like the caffeines and whatever, or the caffeine, because the more you let go of all those external things, the more sensitive you are to what we're talking about. So if you're taking any type of prescription drugs or smoking or weed, or all of that is going to water down your sensitivity. So that's really important. But yeah, you're sitting in it for 10 minutes minimum. Like I said, I did 2 hours twice today, and will before I go to bed. So right when you wake up, middle of the day, sometime in the middle of the day, doesn't matter when, and right before you go to sleep. The right before you go to sleep one is the most powerful, like by far the most important. All of them are important, but that one is super important because it's right as you're going into that other world. So you're doing it for whatever it is, 10 minutes, you fall asleep, and you get that ripple effect of that energy, because your ego isn't in the way at night when you're sleeping, compared to when you wake up. You'll do it for 10 minutes, and then you'll get to your doing all your human stuff, and it's not as easy to hold it. Same thing in the middle of the day, but at night it's like you're doing 10 minutes, but the ROI of that is like 8 hours or whatever, however long you sleep. So I think that's the main message for today's call, for those of you that have been through the process and having trouble holding it. There's a reason why Don only gives us 2 exercises. Okay, like they're so important. And I've tried over the 4 years in every way that I could to get away with any little thing that I could. But every time it comes back and hits me like, oh, no wonder you're so low right now. You haven't been doing your divine focus.
Second exercise.
What's that, Dan?
The second exercise.
Yeah. Second exercise is equally as powerful. It's the ammunition you need against the ego. So you're just taking bullet points each day of little things that you notice. Because after your transformation, all of this stuff is just, you're going to be operating in a whole new way, but it's going to be unconscious, just like most of your patterns before were unconscious. So what this exercise does is it helps bring all of that unconscious new change of how you're operating to your conscious, because you're forcing yourself each day just to make a few bullet points of what changed in your life. Like, oh wow, like for the first time in months, my partner like didn't create a fight, or didn't yell at me, or like whatever it is. Or one thing that was really powerful for me as Don and I were traveling, and this is how I could gauge where I was at, was children that we would just come across in our journey. And like young children, when I was in my highest state, the young children would run up to me, and next thing you know, like I'm talking to all of them, I'm trying to speak in Spanish or whatever the language was, and they're all just surrounding me and like wanting to play and all of that. And compared to if I was low, like they wouldn't even get near me. There would be a blockage there. That was just so for me, that's one of the notes that I had, right? Like how the children were responding to me. And I can tell as well with we have the people around us in our inner circle, many of them have children, and I've had them comment on it like, whoa, like my son, like someone that I had just met, their son, a 4-year-old, and like, wow, my son is so comfortable around you. Will said that not too long ago because he just moved to our city, and he's like, man, Jamie, like my son is so comfortable around you. Normally he's super shy. And so just those things, right, that you can make note of, like that didn't happen before, you know. So, and again, that just gives you ammunition for when the ego comes in. Because one of the big ones, ego will come and try to say like, oh, like nothing's changed in your life, transformation didn't work. That was a big one that took a lot of people out.
So when we post it in the group, it's even probably more powerful rather than stating it just on your own piece of paper. Yeah. But like I just posted a chat right here, so I'm throwing this out to the universe.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Dan. So, Will, can you just put the Telegram group below for these guys? If you're not in the I Am Divinity Telegram group yet, that's exactly what the intention of that group is for those daily updates that all of us can chime in. Right. So you're right. As a collective, as a group, super powerful because maybe, maybe Dan, you're having an off day and you're even having a hard time like making a bullet point or two, but then you go in there and you see all of everyone else's experience, and then it wakes you up to yours, and you're like, oh yeah, like and that reminds me of mine, how that changed today, and then so it's super powerful for all of us to do that, and that would be the second most
Seems like
important.
it seems like I'm talking a lot, but um, it's called the 101 monkey syndrome. So I think that's what's going on here.
Yeah, that's one way of sharing that strategy. I see Coach, you got your hand up. Go ahead, Coach.
Yes, thank you, JB. I just have a couple of observations and a question.
Yes, please. Get some water.
First of all, I appreciate the testimonials that you shared today because sometimes they are very, very impactful in helping somebody really understand what's going on because it's a comparison to real life and how we're also experiencing things. And the other observation is, oh, and the reason for that is we are all capable, obviously, of receiving information and therefore knowledge, but understanding is another thing. And beyond understanding now is wisdom, which is the correct application of the knowledge that we understand. And going through listening to this really helps reinforce that. And by coming several times, I have heard different things that have impacted me and helped me understand better what the whole process is. So those are my observations. The other observation is that the microphone that you guys are using, right, that you're using right there, it's powerful. It's awesome. you know, uh,
Awesome.
I can hear everything really cool right now. I appreciate that. You know, over my years in the Air Force, I developed tinnitus being around jet aircrafts for so long, and but I hear better now. And then the question I have is, would you please define ego within the context of I am divinity? Because prior to this process, we've all have probably understood it differently or used it differently. And a definition of it could really help us in really identifying what we're talking about.
Awesome, Kola. I appreciate your observations and sharing. That's awesome. The microphone works. So one thing that the comments that you made also connect with the question and the answer I'm going to give you. So you were speaking of information and understanding, and we've shared it a few times on this call, but it's great to have that understanding, but that will only take you so far. It's an intellectual construct, and the reason I share that.
Yes.
The reason I share that is the intellect maxes out at level 400 on the consciousness scale, going up to 1,000. And man, the intellect was my hardest challenge to give up, so to speak, because I didn't have this, what you're asking for, this clear definition of the ego. My understanding of the ego before this process and then going through it is much different. But I can also so I can share that the ego and the intellect and the mind are one and the same. And that was really powerful for me. I wasn't able to go beyond that level to the levels I'm now at, because it was all about the mind before. It was all like I read probably 1,000 books, all of the personal development I had ever done, even the religions and reading the Bible every day, like all of it was feeding my intellect. All of the spiritual stuff that I did was feeding my intellect. And it's so interesting, right? Because now looking back, and can share one story with you. We went to Bali, Indonesia. So when Don and I were on this world tour, we got called to Bali, Indonesia, and we were excited because we were, at the time, we were like, man, that's probably like the spiritual hub, on the planet, one of them, right? Like a lot of spiritual leaders and so forth go there. And so Don and I proceeded to go to Bali, and we found ourselves at one of these big events, festival type places, where there was 8 to 10 top names, leaders, gurus, whatever you want to call them in the spiritual realm. And we were like, man, we we nailed it, right? Like all we got to do is get these guys in a room. So we ended up offering the process just in return that they would spread it, like share it with their audience, like share their genuine experience that they had. And that was the agreement. And we go into the there was the home that we had like this meeting to talk about the process. And long story short, there was only one out of, it was about 8 in that room, only one out of the 8 was even open to it. The other 7 wanted nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. And we were so shocked. And so that was my first experience of the spiritual ego. And it was even more powerful than what we had run across before, like the personal development guys or the whatevers. It was like, we thought the spiritual ones would be the most open. They were the most closed. And it was because they had this intellectual understanding of spiritualism that they already had it. Like they already had it. They didn't need it and whatever. They found all these ways to get around it, even though it was like, guys, we're just offering it to you. Like, we're not asking you for anything. Just go through it and share it if it helped, right? But that was wild. That was a crazy experience for me. So yeah, the reason I bring that up is because just like money was the god for me before, so was the intellect. Meaning, like, the more I could study, the more I could read, the more I could learn, the more coaches and seminars I could have, like, go to and have, like, all of that. And yet, when I showed up to Don's doorstep to do the program that first day, all of my shit still existed. As Don has mentioned, I was literally a narcissist without even knowing it. Like, I had to look up what narcissist was after Don nailed me with it, because I was so unconscious to it, right? And of course, connecting it back to my stepdad, I was like, okay, well, it's obvious I picked up something there, right? Like he's clearly, like, if there was a picture of a narcissist, he would be right there next to narcissist in the dictionary type thing, right? Like, that was but I had to look it up. And the very first time Don told me, man, it triggered me. I was like, fuck you, Don. Like, you're a narcissist. And I was literally looking up the traits of a narcissist. And I was like, yeah, that's what, oh, I can see Don has that one. Don, like, I was totally twisted on him, which is typical narcissist, right? It's just hilarious. Yeah, pretty funny. I mean, there was and I don't know if Josh is on the call or not, but Josh and his partner Sloan were one of the first to go through the process the very following week after I did. And I remember it was about 3 weeks in. So Josh had put together events for his family and friends, and you heard him share before. They had amazing experiences. The thing that took Josh out, and I just talked to him yesterday, like it just came to the surface of what it was, because I was recognizing that as we were shifting into the I am talking about the I am divinity, right? When we started doing these calls, like day one, day two, we were starting with the Forex and crypto, and Josh was sharing that, and then we'd go to I am divinity, and he would share his experience there. And I noticed day 4, day 5, there was always something that came up that he had to jump off the call before we talked about the divinity. So I called him out on it. I was like, Josh, what's going on? And he hadn't seen Dawn for well, almost 4 years. Like it was not since that first couple of weeks that he went through it, brought his family through it. And we came to the core of it, which was so Sloane's mother that had battled with alcoholism. After she went through Dawn's program with Josh and Sloan, it was weeks that she didn't drink again, but then she did go back to it. And that was like super disheartening for Sloan and for Josh, because they didn't know how to deal with it, right? So that was the way that the ego got them to give it up, is they witnessed these powerful transformations, but because those people went back to the ego, Josh and Sloan, like they made up all, like the ego made up all the things of, it doesn't work, or, it works for a short time, but not a long time, all of that. And then I remember right around that same time when all of that was happening, because Josh and Sloan were like all in on like this mission of helping us spread this divinity program. And then they went off and just did the money programs and did the hedge fund stuff and all that, which they did great financially. And it's so awesome to see Josh come back around and admit like, hey, I did go off and did make all the money, and I'm hanging out with all the guys with the money, but just making rich people richer, like there's an emptiness here. And so it's awesome to have him come back with us. But the reason he was jumping off the calls is because he was feeling out of integrity, that he couldn't share the whole story, that they had gone back to the ego. And so he felt, because he hates liars, right? Like he felt he had him tricked, that he had to lie about the full story. And I'm like, Josh, no, man, like it's even crazier. And they need to know about that even more, of how tricky the ego is. And that's why when I brought on that story of Joshua and the walker, it was like, how crazy is that? The guy sprinted out of his walker for the first time in 4 years, and then gives all that up and goes back to the walker. Like crazy. And that's just, again, how tricky the ego is. And if we broke it down with Joshua or Josh or Sloan, because I know my own, I bet it was okay. Like if you look at the whole trajectory of it, I bet it was okay. The ego told me to stop doing the middle of the day exercise. Now I'm just doing one in the morning, one at the night. And then now I'm just doing the one at the night. And now I'm not doing it anymore. And now I'm not updating Dawn anymore. And now my family's telling me like it doesn't work. I'm back drinking alcohol again. And next thing you know, the thing doesn't work and I'm out. But it got so intense. And the reason why I shared this whole thing, it got so intense that I remember having a call with Josh, and he was literally convinced, and he laughs about it now looking back, but he was literally convinced that Dawn had hypnotized them, and that Dawn was the devil. Dawn was literally the walking devil, hypnotized them, and wanted nothing to do with Dawn anymore, right? And so it's just crazy. Like that's how messed up the ego can be. And that was with Josh and I being so close, right? So the only saving grace was our relationship, right? And him seeing that I was staying with it, and he couldn't deny my transformation no matter how much time. And then now to come back around, because he went on his own detour, as many of us do, and I did as well, and came back to the truth of it, right? So yeah, I share all that because, again, just another powerful example of how crazy it can be to give it up. But again, that frog in boiling water, right? If you throw it in the boiling water, it'll jump out. But if you turn it up slowly, that's what the ego's a master at. So that it's unconsciously happening. And then you wake up one day and you're like, Don's the devil, and this thing never even worked.
You, you, thanks for sharing that. It really couldn't be more real, and it was helpful for me in understanding because I come from that world also of the intellect and the coaching and the spiritual. Someday I'll get to share uh, my testimony. It's quite interesting, and grasping things and working with it. And the key thing that I've gotten so far is the application on how to attain that state. And it blew my mind because things I hadn't thought about in years gave me an indication. Even though I knew stuff, you are not wise until you rightly apply what you know and understand. So that application was helpful for me in actually attaining that state. And I wasn't quite sure about the maintenance, and today was helpful in understanding the maintenance in terms of the three. And I can understand it, and I'll be sharing more as we go. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. And I'm excited for um, a day or two or three from now where you're going to come on and say, wow, yeah, like I don't only understand it, I feel it, man. Like this is wild. That's where you'll get to after doing those just sinking into it, right? Because it's like anything, going to the gym, like it takes a while to build up that muscle, and that's what it is. It's an energetic cellular muscle that it's not used to this crazy high vibration that it hasn't experienced since however many decades ago that the ego took over. So yeah, super important to sit in that, man. And again, that was like the first thing that the ego would convince me to give up, that and the daily updates. So if we all do those two things together as a community, I mean, there's nothing that can stop us. So I'm excited to really lock
Thanks,
that in.
man.
Yeah, you're welcome,
Appreciate
Coach.
it.
Yeah, great to have you, man. So again, the I Am Divinity support group. So we'll start sharing our daily updates too. And for those of you that have gone through everything and are in there, please share. I mean, there's nothing that you could share that we haven't yet. It's like it's all in the open over here. So don't need to hide anything. And that's one of the things, again, the ego will use against you if you're hiding anything, right? Like for Josh, for example, he wasn't telling me like the reason I don't want to come on to share the I Am Divinity stuff is because like I don't want to have to lie. But I it's not like I ever told him to lie. It's like the ego tricked him that he had to lie about it, right? And that would take him out. That would totally take him out. And we actually just had the inner circle agree on doing a private virtual boardroom session with Don, so that everyone's firing it on all cylinders, and that's be super
Can I
important.
kind of, if I can share with you that I did notice that about Josh, and I think it was like around day 7 or something like that. And I was saying to myself, hmm, okay, so this is two totally separate things, and I'd hardly ever seen uh, Josh really as involved in this end, but
Yeah,
he was it on the other end. And just subconsciously, I kind of thought about it that way, as far as what was his level of commitment to the I am divinity end of it. So it's good to hear that, because we all go through stuff like that.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I did firsthand many a time, so I get it as well. And um, so Josh, you're right to pick that up because Josh was just coming from, again, that intellectual level, but he wasn't embodying what it was, because the almost 4 years ago is when he gave it up. And it was because and he wasn't able to get over it until just last night when I talked to him, because finally
Mm.
he was honest with me about that piece. So he was holding that in, right? He didn't share that with me, and that's why the ego used that to, take him out. So super excited to have him back on
Okay.
board. Yeah.
Uh,
It happens to the best of us, that's for sure. But I'm excited for all of you that actually have many examples that have, done the long road ahead of you. Because when I met Don, he had really only been working with the elite, and it wasn't like I could just call up Jim Balsley at BlackBerry and say, "Hey Jim, like I'm having this problem here. Like, can you help me? Like, you took Don's problems a few years ago. Like, can you help me through this? Like, what's going on? I don't know." I couldn't do that, right? But all of you have that. Like, we're creating this community that Don didn't do before, because he was just working with, them one off, and then they would introduce them to their people, and that whole crowd would want to keep things very private, right? I remember one example, the Calgary Flames, the professional hockey team in Canada. So Don was working with the Edmonton Oilers, and that was a whole interesting story of how he got a hold of, was it Glenn Sather? Before my time, but Glenn Sather is pretty famous in the hockey world. And Don had the back and forth with Glenn, like, and Glenn's like, "Oh, so it sounds like you think you can help our players." And Don said, "Well, no, I know I can." And Glenn said, "Well, it sounds like you're pretty full of yourself." And Don said, "Well, come on, man. Like, if you ask Wayne Gretzky if he can score a goal, what's he gonna say? Like, maybe? Like, come on." And so next thing you know, he's working with the Edmonton Oilers, gets them into the playoffs, and then he's the Calgary Flames are coming knocking, because Don had first, he was living in Calgary at the time. He had first went after Calgary, and they turned him down. So anyway, he ends up working with Jerome Aginla of the Calgary Flames, who was the captain at the time. And Jerome was having one of those like major off seasons, so it was all over the headlines, like, Jerome, what happened to Jerome? And he only had I think it was 3 goals a third of the way into the season. So he was just playing terrible. And anyway, he works with Don, and Don didn't end up working with anyone else on the team, just Jerome. And that year, Jerome wins the trophy, the Maurice Richard Trophy for most goals scored in the season at 50 something. And the Flames hadn't been even into the playoffs for I forget how many years, and they went from not being in the playoffs to 1 game away from winning the Stanley Cup. And the interesting part was Jerome didn't want anyone else on the team to know that he was working with Don. He was embarrassed about it. Like, so that's one example of how the ego used that,
mm.
right? To have him not share it. And so that story is very common with all those elite that Don was working with. They would maybe introduce to a few of their buddies, or in Jim's cases, he opened it up to the executives of the company because it would help them, do better.
Mm.
But he never created a community, like a public thing like that. And that was my previous experience, building these online communities. So it was just a
Yeah.
perfect match when it came together. And I'm excited for all of you to have that support.
One more quick question, if you don't mind. Are you no longer going to have just sharing the other side, the previous side, on these calls?
Yeah, great question. So number one, which is urgent, is having that private executive session with Don, and then that's where we'll gauge, Josh's side with the financial instruments, because like you were sharing, like it's just a bit of a disconnect right now when we're sharing all this energy. Like we need him back in it to be able to
Mm-hmm.
share it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
Even though the financial systems he have, on that, intellectual level are great. So we just in the last few days have been making the shift of putting the divinity number one. And Sam and I talked about it walking last night after the gym, and it really hammered home like uh, we don't need to say the numbers over and over again. Literally in the membership, like it's there, the performance sheet for the Forex fund, right? And we have an overview of the crypto fund now that's going in there. So like you don't need to share much. And the kicker was if people haven't gone through this process, it's going to be really hard for them to trust us at a high level, with their money anyways. And this is the biggest gift that we can give them. So we lead with this and then keep the financial programs more of like exclusive to the divinity crowd, that felt a lot better than let's just bring everyone and anyone for the money, and then if they do the divinity, it's a bonus. It's like, no, we don't need a bigger community that's watered down and full of that ego energy. Like that's just not what we want. We would rather a tighter group that is in this powerful state and committed to that, and then bless them with all the financial programs, right? So they are still there. We'll have and now we had to rebrand everything. So the banking system is now, we just sent over the logos and everything. It's now the Divinity Bank, and the fund and all that. So
Okay,
that's
if I can share something in that respect, if you don't mind, is that the divinity end also is in the back office,
it
but
is.
we're doing this every day, and it's very powerful, and it helps a ton.
Yeah.
The financial end, yes, it's in the office, but I gained um some respect for that end because of the things that I heard you guys share about it, and because of the things that just shared about it. And while because of my uh, intellect and spiritual end, what I've been through over the last 70 some years, I was initially kind of reticent about really getting into I Am Divinity. But the other end kept me in and kept me coming. And then the more I heard about the divinity, the more it made a whole lot of sense to me. And then there was one day that you said something that gave me a higher level of understanding of the integrity in what you're doing. Is when you said, um, we want to do something. Part of the reason we're doing this is because, and sharing with you all, we want you to understand we're not just like any other company who's just about the money, the money, the money, the money. We want to show the our level of integrity in terms of this I am divinity. And I said to myself, that's it. That's why they're unique. That's why this is unique. I can believe all of it. So that's my observation on the two ends.
I appreciate you sharing that, Coach. Yeah. So um, to be clear, we will still be sharing the financial part. It's just such a small part, man. It's like we were imagining we could have a 5 minute onboarding call where it's like, okay, this is, your new bank account, and these are the options to invest in if you want. Like it doesn't take much, right? But like you're saying, the reason that we have integrity with that side is because of the divinity. And we just got to the point where, again, putting divinity number one, and not watering anything down, not hiding anything. It felt like a
Right.
disconnect when it was like, oh, here's the money, guys, you know, incomation, and then bonus, right? What you actually need. And it was like, you know what, man, let's just share where we're at, why this is so powerful. Because there's, like Sam said in the opening, there's so many financial companies and so many people have been scammed. And like, we don't need to be put in the same box of that. Leading from the divinity, people already trust us. And it's just going to be natural for you to be like, well, I got some extra money and I need to find a place to invest it. Like, it's just going to be natural for you to do that with us when you already trust us at this very, very deep level.
If
There's
you
no
did
way that
scam
we
some,
could. Sorry?
if you did scam, you better get a shield for a lightning bolt.
Awesome, Dan. Yeah, so it's just like there's not a bigger gift that we could give you than this process. I was sharing yesterday, like even if I gave my brother who's struggling with alcohol and weed, if I gave him $1 million, if I gave him $1 million, that's quite a gift, right?
Yes.
But I know if I gave him that $1 million, that his little bag of weed would turn into a big grow up and his bottle of alcohol would turn into owning the bar on the corner street. And so I know it would completely harm him in those toxic programs. So the only true gift that I can give my younger brother who's struggling like that is this process. And then everything in his life will be healthy, including his financial part. And who's he going to want to trust with his funds other than the guys that totally showed him how to completely transform his life? And like to
Right.
that, us, that's just a side bonus anyways. It's like we're just to the point where we don't give a fuck about the money. Like, so maybe, you know, as I said, I left room there. Josh goes through the process again. He's back, you know, in his divinity, and he wants to share his financial part. All the power to him. For me,
Yep.
I looked at Sam on day 4. I said, Sam, I cannot hear about the 20% and the 7 years of data and da, 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 da. I can't hear about that again. I'm going to like seriously shoot myself. Like it was that bad. Like this is so boring, man. Like this is not going to change anyone's life. Again, even if I give you $1 million and you didn't go through the process, it would just be fuel for your ego. Just be
This
fuel.
part is very needed. There's no doubt this part is very needed. And it helped me to understand you much better because remember a while back, I said what really amazed me was your countenance, the way you held yourself, and how can you go through 3 hours of almost hostile grilling because things weren't working, and with a smile just answering everybody? How could he do that? Now I know how.
Now you
So
know
that
how.
that helped me to give credibility to the whole issue. Because some of the people you were working with, they were not operating that way, that the way that you were operating. You could
Hell
see
no.
it in the language. They couldn't feel that way. They couldn't reach that level. You could see it in the language. And there was something very, very unique about how you held yourself and how you conducted yourself. And that's proof in the pudding right there.
Yeah, it is,
Thank you for that
Coach.
share.
I appreciate you recognizing that. And you know, I was on my own journey. I shared yesterday that the ego had me twisted. That you know what, not many people want this divinity thing, so let's just do this program for the money, so we can just focus on our divinity. And it had me putting the money first because the next thing you know, and I shared on many opening calls of Incomation, I was like, guys, like I just wanted a few accounts for me and Dawn to make some passive income. And next thing you know, there's 3,000 people knocking on our door asking us to get these freaking accounts. And we're scrambling to build 2 offices and 80 employees and pass all these challenges for the props that ended up just screwing everyone anyways in the end. And it was like this ego had me on this total goose chase. And I guess that's what I needed because that was pretty painful to go through all that. And then even just as recent as November, being like, well, we got to rebrand things definitely from Incomation only being about the money. That's attracted all the ego. So let's go consciousness, currency, and currency. And even that was like, now consciousness and currency are what, on the same level? So that means I wasn't putting my divinity number one. So it just came all out in the last week. It's like, you know what? Divinity number one for us personally, divinity number one for the community. And yes, we'll have some nice financial programs in the background, but you're coming to us for the divinity because nobody else has this. And we don't want all those guys like the pastor that justifies with the ego that it's okay to do the next rug pull, get in early, guys, because we don't know if it's going to be out in 4 to 6 weeks. Like, what? Like, we don't want anything to do with them anyways. And many of them have ran away when we shifted into, you know, this level of the real intention. So I appreciate people like you, Coach, that are still around. This is the true pioneers, okay? Not the ones that put the money in and we're expecting a return and want me to guarantee it so that they get some money back and then they can make the 1,000 and so their life isn't totally ruined. Like, give me a break. Like, seriously, take all the responsibility for them because, you know, they took a financial risk and made an investment that didn't work out with other companies. And now what? We're supposed to be responsible for them? Like, and then they just play the victim thing over and over again. And it's like, nah, we don't want any of that. Take your crypto pump and dumps and your Ponzi schemes and your ego and your victim mentality and get the fuck away from us, respectfully. And those of you that are ready, let's do this divinity thing. And yeah, we're gonna have a nice financial flow on the back end too, because we absolutely deserve it. We're doing the most powerful thing on the planet for everyone. For, like I said, bringing it down to my brother, it's the only gift, a true gift that I could give him. Well, then, of course, it's the only true gift I can give my partner and guys like Sam. I told Sam today, and he agreed. I said, Sam, if I reached out to you a year ago and said, "Hey, I got this Forex program where to make the money," he would have like, "Okay, dude, like I get those all the time. I've made millions. I don't give a shit." But I said, Sam, I have my mentor Don. I really sense that you need to connect with him, and totally changed his life. And now he moved to the Philippines to be around us 24/7 because there's nothing better on earth. What a gift. So
Yeah, if I can say that you got two things that nobody else is offering, period. On the financial end, you're offering the institutional ability to make money on a retail level, but you're doing it with people who have integrity, and they will see that through the divinity because they're gonna see their need too. That it's not just about the money; it's also about their life, their purpose, what they're here for, and they can attain that through this process right here. So that could be a draw, and not everybody wants to be uh, any wants to be in any entity you can mention, any organization you can mention, whether religious or what. Not everybody wants to be in it, but it does not deny the need for that particular entity or organization or community. And to the extent that the people who are uh, explaining it and teaching it totally believe in it, it's still going to grow and it's going to attract the right people. And that's the key thing.
absolutely, yeah, massively. Because again, it's we have the only we're the only ones that have what we have. You know, thanks to Don and his decades of reverse engineering all of this. Like, um, everyone's promoting a financial thing. Like nobody cares. But yeah, you're right. We're the only ones that brought the institutional world, which is legitimate, to the retail guys because everyone in retail is getting screwed over. 100%. They're all scams. Every single one of them. No integrity at all. But again, like if I gift you with this absolute transformation compared to what I help you made 10,000, 100,000, even a million, what is truly going to impact your life? And then the people that we're really looking for I mean, they're guys like us that have gone through that road of many years of personal development, many years of entrepreneurship, making lots of money, found out it wasn't the answer. They come to us, they get the answer, and they also have a bunch of money because they went down that road and they know where to trust it with now. Or on the flip side, the guys that don't have any money whatsoever, it's because they keep repeating their toxic cycle of sabotage. And this is literally the only thing that could gift them to actually have any money to invest.
Yep.
Right? Like, we're not going to change your life if it's your last $500 and you put it into crypto fund and get a 10x and now you got 5,000 for the year and you spend it in 1 month on weed. Like, seriously.
Well, thank you, sir. Thanks
Hey, there's
for
the
you for
coach.
letting me share.
Yeah, great to see you, bud.
And
Uh,
I'm here. I'll be down the road, hopefully,
Frozen.
as I am allowed to.
All right, man.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, you're welcome. I'm super excited to be on this journey with you and everyone that's still on this call. So we're going to wrap up. We're going to do a little tech support call. Will be graciously handling that without his vape pen, right? And that will be in 15 minutes. So, Will, can you drop the onboarding call below? So the onboarding is just if you need some technical help to get into the membership portal, which, by the way, we didn't even mention it, but it's free right now and you get access to everything, which is I Am Divinity program. Don normally charges a minimum of $10,000 these days to work with you. That's in there for free, just hanging out. We got Don to do a monthly call with the community too live. So we're just booking the next one and we'll let you guys know. And then the financial programs are there too, the Forex and the crypto, and Forex is the only institutional one that you'll come across that's available to the average guys like us. And the crypto fund is there too that Josh and his team handle. And we're working real hard on getting Josh back in his divinity so that all of that stuff flows even smoother. I told him we don't need any ego crashes. Okay. So you really want to be at a high level of partnership with us. We all got to be on the same board, on the same level, same team, and be holding our divinity. So I'll bring Sam on. He wants to share. And I love all of you. Thank you for being with us. We ain't going anywhere. I'll see you in the I Am Divinity support chat. I want to see your daily updates, even if it's like, man, I didn't do my middle of the day exercise and I'm feeling it today. Or man, I went a whole day without doing my exercise. I can feel it. And tomorrow I'm committed to doing all 10 minutes minimum each time. So
Yeah. So I just want to say, where are you going to find this level of leadership where, the CEO, the person that's actually leading the ship is willing to actually like put all of his garbage out there. You know what I mean? A lot of the times they want to be in this light of I'm perfect and all this stuff. And so I really appreciate the fact that Jamie's willing to share all of, everything. I mean, have you ever heard a narcissist say that he was a narcissist?
well, I had to get over it first before I could share.
Yeah, right. He didn't know he was at the time. So it's really interesting.
But have you ever heard of a narcissist overcoming it?
Yeah, that's another thing as well. So, it's just beautiful and it's just really refreshing to be a part of something so authentic, so real. And, just to kind of drive the point home before we close it up with Mr. Tim, at the time when I did my process, I held it for only a couple of days, maybe 3-4 days. And I've shared this before. I was in a really toxic marriage, super abusive. And I literally every time I would get into my divine focus every morning, or sometimes even before I would get into it, an argument would start. And so I thought that it would be way easier for me to get out of my light, to give up my divinity, to continue that relationship with my ex-wife. And so, this is why it's so important to, Jamie actually hit on this yesterday. Your partner needs to go through this. It's going to be almost impossible for you to have a relationship with them if you're vibrating up here and they're still in their old toxic programs. So make sure that you are sharing this with people, especially the people that you love, the people that you are close to, because I'm telling you, it's going to be literally impossible to have a relationship with them if they're still holding on to all of their garbage and you're flying high. So there's nothing that's more important than being in your light. That's what we're here to do, is to remind you of who you are, what you're capable of, and you know, the financial aspect, the financial piece is amazing. Like I said, we have the very best financial programs in the industry. I've been a part of all of them. I've done all of them. There's nothing like it. But at the end of the day, you know, you make a little bit of money. It's not gonna mean much if you don't actually are in your divinity. So with that being said, Will, if we can close it out with Mr. Tim. And thank you all for being here. We'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. And if you're going to be on the onboarding call, the link should be in the chat. And so once again, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
When I look in the mirror, there's a man that I see who's been searching a lifetime for a way to be free, never knowing the darkness that was following me like a mutating virus, one that I couldn't see. And I breathed you in, and I fell again. I can see the end. Here I am now, I transcend. I want you to know I see who you are, and I'm letting go. You were everywhere, in my everything. I don't need you now. I was searching for answers, they were there all the time, but I just couldn't see them. In my heart I was blind. I believed in your story, now I know it wasn't true. And I see who I am now, and I know what to do. And I'm breathing in, and I'll start again. I want you to know I see who you are, and I'm letting go. You were everywhere, in my everything. I don't need you now. Just turn around and go. I can't do this anymore. I want you to know I see you.